With the success of Clannad, it was only inevitable that Key would create a follow-up to it. 1 year later, Clannad After Story debuted and continued the story of Tomoya and his friends after the events of Clannad, and also delves into his life after high school ends. And since the last couple lists were about Clannad, I've decided that I'm going to count down my top 10 favorite episodes from Clannad After Story. Like always, spoilers ahead, and if there's an episode that you like that doesn't appear on this list, feel free to leave a comment about your favorite episodes from Clannad After Story, or make your own list. With that said, let's rock it! To start off this list is an episode that works its way to the top.
You suck!
After Tomoya got a job in the previous episode, this episode deals with the downsides of Tomoya's job, such as fitting in with the other workers, trying to do a task that requires extending his broken arm, and also trying to keep a good relationship with Nagisa going. One of the reasons I like this episode is how it showcases the issues for Tomoya. Not only does it feel very realistic, but it also makes the scenes where Tomoya gets through these issues very satisfying, such as the moments with Tomoya and Nagisa spending time together. I also think the interactions between Tomoya and Yusuke are handled pretty well because their differing personality/viewpoints make for some very interesting dialogue. Combine that with some pretty humorous moments and you get a pretty good episode overall. Number 9 is episode 15. This episode not only deals with the risks of having a child for Tomoya really well, but it also deals with the risks for Nagisa, and I think the execution for that is also really well done, and it made me feel bad for this character because there were a lot of risks going into this. Another reason I liked this episode was not only the good comedic moments from Akio, but it also brought on the feels when Akio gave Tomoya a few more details regarding that tragic night when Nagisa nearly died, and when he gave Tomoya that big speech afterwards, it was very emotional and really well done. The reason I like this scene is not just because of the beautiful music and animation, but I also really liked it because throughout After Story, Akio is treated as the comic relief. So having a serious moment from him and have it work well makes the episode that much better. Plus, I really love the moment near the end with Tomoya and Nagisa on the beach. It's really touching. Plus, their promise near the end of the episode left me excited for what happens next. Then episode 16 happened. We'll get to that later. Number 8 is episode 8. Whoa, deja vu there. So what makes this episode stand out over the other episodes on this list? Well, not only does this episode have likable new characters such as the opposing gang leader Sasaki, but it gives characters like Yukine a lot more personality than in previous episodes, as well as character traits that make me like her even more. This episode also does a good job with emotional moments, such as the scene near the end where it's revealed that Yukine's brother Kazuto, who was one of the gang leaders, died over a year ago, and Yukine dressed up as her brother in order to stop the violence between the two gangs. Another reason I like this episode is because of the great fight scene between Tomoya and Sasaki. It not only came off as dramatic, but watching this fight reminded me a bit of the original Dragon Ball or even a martial arts fight. And as someone who loves action scenes, I can't complain. Plus, I love the animation in this fight. It just made the scene stand out a lot more in my opinion. I also really liked the explanation Yukine gave about the light orbs, because after seeing these stupid things for almost a season and a half, it's nice to see one of the questions I had about the show get answered. So, what's better than an episode with a really good fight? An episode with great comedic bits and closure! 4 episodes after her friends graduated, Nagisa finally graduates high school and marries Tomoya 2 episodes after he proposed.
Right pacing! Give me a fucking break.
Needless to say, I was glad that this was finally wrapped up because it was kinda weird seeing the oldest main character stay in high school the longest, and seeing the two get legally married, admittedly off screen, was pretty great as well. Another positive that I can give to this episode is the comedic bits. Much like with Clannad's 20th episode, this episode had a lot of great comedic moments that left me in a laughing fit for a bit if you saw my reaction to this episode. Such as the scene where Nagisa gets drunk and hijinks ensue. Maybe it's because I haven't seen that much anime with that many drunk scenes in them, but I still find this one to be pretty funny. Plus, I love the ending to this episode as it made me really interested to see what these two would tackle next together. And then the next episode happened.
Nagisa and Tomoya are having a child. Congratulations!
And apparently the two are part rabbit or something because that was fucking quick! Number 6 is episode 6. In the previous episode, we got to see bits of Misei's past, which was good, but I personally felt that it wasn't good enough to be on this list. Episode 6, on the other hand, continues Misei's flashback, but the way the story twists and turns made me more interested in Misei than in the previous episode. I also like her friendship with Shima, and the way it almost developed into a relationship was handled pretty well in my opinion. Plus, I think these two are cute together as a couple. Ah, crap, my feels are giving off. Give me a shot from a tranquilizer, Toucher! Another reason I love this flashback was the revelation that the Shima we've seen for 2 episodes isn't the real one, but a cat from the real one who's dying, and after Mise admits her feelings for him, he disappears shortly after. That's really sad. It seemed like she would have had a chance with Shima, and seeing it end like this was not only sad, but very surprising. Both of which I like in terms of execution, and the music once again helps the scene stand out a lot more in my opinion, giving off a somber and sad farewell tone to it. My only problem with this episode is the ending where Mise realizes that Shima is now the cat. Feels really awkward to watch because her old flame is a goddamn cat! I'd say it raises a few red flags, but the flagpole won't let me raise it any higher. Though, at least this episode gave the main couple of the show something to do together, since previous episodes of After Story didn't give them much regarding that. Number 5 on this list is episode 12. This episode starts off with a bang when Yusuke tells Tomoya about his past, and this flashback certainly doesn't hold any punches as it reveals Yusuke's rise to becoming a rock star, him helping out those less fortunate, and his eventual downfall as a rock star, including him taking heroin. Which leads him to reuniting with the woman he loved after he moved back to his old town. Yeah, when I said that this episode was not holding any punches, I meant it, because this flashback is not only really sad, but it makes me care about this character after seeing what he went through. And he's just a secondary character. Hell, I think a lot of scenes in this episode are really well done, such as the scene where Tomoya and Nagisa are together. I've pretty much made it apparent by now, but I like this couple, so seeing them together in a scene discussing their issues and growing closer is great to watch for me. Especially at the end after Tomoya breaks down and he proposes to Nagisa. The feels, man! The feels! Crap. Hit me with another tranquilizer, Toucher!
Why does he think I'm the one tranquilizing him? Something is wrong here.
So yeah, in terms of characters and emotion, I think this episode did a good job with that, and the conflict was certainly handled pretty well, especially near the end where Tomoya and his father talk after his dad gets arrested. Overall, great episode. Wait, hang on, hold up, Toucher. You haven't been giving me the tranquilizers?
That's what I've been trying to tell you!
Then who is?
I don't know! But it's someone who has the blue gun and dots!
Jesus Christ. Okay. Gekra Ninja and inspect the area, because I got a list to finish.
Got it!
Number 4 is episode 18. Funny thing about this episode is that when I was initially ranking this list, this episode wasn't even going to be on here. But when I took a look back at this episode, as well as the episode that was originally going to be on this list, episode 20, I realized that that was a mistake and I replaced it with this episode. So what did this episode do right? Well, first off, I love the animation. I know I haven't been talking much about this element, but this is an exception because unlike the previous episodes, this looks gorgeous. The animation is pretty good in terms of character designs, but the way the lighting and backgrounds are done in this episode is so great that I can't take my eyes off it. I also like the dynamic between Tomoya and Ushio. Unlike the previous episode, Tomoya seems to care a little bit more about Ushio in this episode, and it certainly makes for some great father-daughter moments. Another element that I really loved was the scene where Tomoya talks with his grandmother, and she helps Tomoya come to terms with his father by explaining that his father tried his best to be a parent to Tomoya after his mother died, and how he wasn't that bad of a father to him. I like this scene because not only does it wrap up one of my biggest issues with the show, that being Tomoya being angry about his dad, but it also allows Tomoya to become a better father to Ushio, which he does, and I gotta admit, the scene in the sunflower field certainly had my feels going off. God damn it. But I think another reason the two scenes worked that well was because of the music. In the first scene, that music that plays, which is Distant Years for those curious, gives off a sad/moment of realization tone to it, and is really well done. While the scene in the flower field near the end gives off a very emotional sad tone, which is also really well done. So, with Tomoya finally becoming a better parent and moving on with his life, what could kill it? Oh yeah, this episode. Okay, for those of you that saw the review I did on After Story or the Manny blog I did recently, you'll know that I am not a fan of killing off Ushio as a plot point. However, since the video came out, I've changed my stance on Ushio's death. I'm not a fan of the idea of killing her off, but the execution did work and it made me feel something, so that's why it's up there. Why do I bring it up? Because episode 21 is pretty much based around the fact that Ushio is going to die. We find out that she contracted the same disease as her mom, her body begins to slowly shut down, she can hardly move, and it all culminates with her dying in her father's arms in the snow. Not only is the music during her death, titled Snowfield for those curious, a beautiful and sad piece, but the animation for it is absolutely gorgeous. I also think that her death in the snow is very symbolic, since winter usually represents death and destruction, which is what happens here. And it's also really sad to watch because Tomoya is left to watch his own daughter, his own flesh and blood, slowly die in his arms, and there's nothing he can do to stop it, even crying out to Nagisa to save his daughter. It is a scene of torment, of depression, a scene where his family is now gone and he's the only one left. This scene gives off a lot of emotions and it helped further by the great dialogue, and that's why I think it deserves to be number 3 on this list. For not only hitting the right notes in animation/music, but for making the viewer feel emotional over a character they possibly cared about. So what happened after Ushio died? Episode 22 happened. Well, I'm not a fan of the girl and the robot being important in this final episode. It at least gives them some purpose to the series instead of being a goddamn appendix to the structure of the show. Not only does the animation look great when the world is falling apart, but I also like the unique bits when Tomoya is sent back in time. It kind of reminds me a bit of the TARDIS flying through time. It looks really cool. Another thing I liked about this episode is that after all the shit Tomoya went through, he can finally be with his family since the new timeline has Ushio and Nagisa survive. Because reasons. I could complain about how stupid it was for the light orbs to activate after a child died, but frankly, after all the shit Tomoya went through, seeing a happy ending for this guy is good enough for me. Speaking of which, I loved the montage that showed Ushio, Tomoya, and Nagisa as a family, and I also enjoyed getting to see the other characters that were given a little screen time after episode 9/16 again, either doing their dream jobs or just enjoying life. Sure, the second half mostly consisted of Fuko and her sister, but I enjoyed their scenes since they had some really funny dialogue, and it was overall interesting to watch. Overall, while this episode does have its issues, such as essentially retconning the last 6 episodes, and the light orbs activating 3 episodes after Tomoya got the last one, the good moments make up for that in spades. But what could top it? I'm pretty sure some of you know, but let's find out. My number 1 entry is an episode that made me legitimately upset. Number 1 is an episode that had a lot of good comedic bits as well as drama to it that made me love the episode over the others. Number 1 is episode 16. See, I told you I would get back to this episode. In terms of entertainment, this episode does a pretty good job with that when the main group celebrate New Year's and talk about what they've been doing with their lives after high school, and it makes for some pretty great dialogue. Plus, we get another explanation about the alternate world thanks to Kotomi, which, as shown with the previous entry, does exist, and it's good that we get an explanation about it, since aside from the times I've already discussed it, they don't really explain the alternate world that much. But entertainment isn't the only thing I liked about this episode, since the conflict/tension do a really good job as Nagisa's pregnancy gets closer and closer to its completion, right around the time winter sets in, and the high amounts of snow pretty much makes the roads unusable. Thankfully, she is able to deliver her child, but a few minutes later, she dies. I gotta be honest, guys, this really hit hard for me. I know that the show and Clannad killed off some characters in flashbacks, but those were secondary/minor characters. So to see one of the main characters get axed off like that, especially right after delivering her child, is really sad. I didn't think I'd feel this emotional over a fictional character dying, but yet it happened. I mentioned before that I broke down crying after seeing this episode, and that's true. I did legitimately tear up when this character died because I didn't expect that to happen, especially since Nagisa managed to survive her unexplained illness twice before. I thought she would have made it, but she didn't, and it made me feel that emotional. And that's why I put this episode over the other episodes on this list. With Ushio's death, I was saddened, but I was also enraged by it if you saw the reaction. With Nagisa's death, I was saddened, but also shocked because I didn't expect that to happen, and leaving her husband without a wife and her daughter without a mother kinda hit hard in the feels for me. If an episode can do that, I think it deserves to be on this list. I'm the Mountie, and this concludes my top 10 favorite Clannad Afterstory episodes. Take care, everyone. Alright, now who's been shooting me with tranquilizers? What the hell were in those things?
Enough! Who in the hell are you?
Very well. I shall tell you.